welcome to the Badass Breastfeeding Podcast. This is Dianne, your lactation consultant.
And I'm Abby, the Badass Breastfeeder. And today's episode is brought to you by Sarah's Chill with the all-you-need wash basin bag. You'll always have a safe place to wash your essentials. All you need is soap and water. And we will hear more from our sponsor later. But you can head to badassbreastfeedingpodcast.com and check out our sponsor page. All of the sponsors we've ever had are there. And if you need anything, see if you can give them any of your business because they make this podcast possible. And while you're there, scroll down and enter your email address and we'll send episodes straight to your inbox every week. And we are also on Patreon. You all know by now. I hope that you've all clicked the link in the show notes under this episode, wherever you're listening from. It's the very top link. There's a list there of all the different tiers you can choose from. We have our mini podcasts, our ad-free episodes. We even have a tier where I send you a personal card every month.
I don't even get one.
Oh, yeah, I should send you one. I'll just be sending you the stickers that you already have.
I know, right? Send me an encouragement card every month. I need it. Yeah. I need one. It's worth it alone just for the Revolution Parenting podcast episodes. It's worth it.
Seriously, it's true. Yeah. We do have our Revolution Parenting episodes there. I don't know if anybody remembers that podcast that we had for a little while and then we stopped.
Yeah, you guys might not know that, but we did. We started a parenting. Revolution Parenting is more parenting stuff. And then we decided to, stay focused more on this podcast. But we had like a lot of episodes. So we're posting them in Patreon.
Yeah.
So if you're at a place where, you're wondering about parenting stuff, that might be the place for you right now.
Yeah, and you can like scroll back and see. I think you can. Yeah, can you scroll back and see the ones that came before?
Yeah.
Wait, can you?
I think you can. Yeah. I think once you open once you start unlocking, you unlock everything. I'm pretty sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's cool. You can scroll back and see all the stuff.
Mm-hmm.
We're also still hosting that ongoing giveaway. So just send us your reviews anywhere on the internet. Take a screenshot, stars, whatever. It's still happening. Send us the review and your address, and we'll send you a goodie bag. It's badassbreastfeedingpodcast@gmail.com. And now Dianne has our review of the week.
I have our review of the week. And it says, so happy to have found this podcast. I love listening to each episode and I find myself laughing every time. I've been nursing for a year and I love all the tips they share and that I share the same struggles as well as joys of breastfeeding. It helps you feel not so alone. And that is really nice because, it can feel really lonely. And we do, extra episodes, ad-free episodes for Patreon. And there was one that we were talking about, like when your friends don't really stay your friends after you have
that's
kids.
Coming out this month. That's our sort of late September one. That's coming out today, hopefully.
And it's true, and like, what do you do about that and how it feels? And because you can feel so alone. And my breastfeeding group that I have on Mondays, which everybody is invited to, by the way, I usually post a link in my Facebook group. But
okay, wait a minute. You got to back up.
Oh,
so okay. You have a Facebook group.
I have a Facebook group called Breastfeeding Boot Camp.
All right, so everybody should join Breastfeeding Boot Camp.
Breastfeeding Boot Camp. And then we do have Breastfeeding Boot Camp on Mondays from 1 to 2:30 p.m. Eastern time. So anybody can join. But we were talking about that last week because one of our little boot campers there, she was saying how like she lost all her friends. She had a baby later in life. So she's got a couple older kids and then had her little one that she's got now who's less than a year. And she's like, yeah, I lost all of them. Like they're gone. They're all gone. I have no more friends left.
So sad.
And it's just, it's so hard when people don't get you. And Or they just, you're just in a different place. You get to be in a different place than your friends. And it can be really hard if they're not, if they don't have kids yet, or if their kids are older than your kids are. It's hard. And I've kind of been in the reverse of that, where because of what I do for a living, I meet a lot of people that are younger than me that have younger kids.
Right.
And they can even be like colleagues or whatever, some of the chiropractors that I've worked with and things like that. Some of the nutritionists that I work with and therapists and stuff like that. They have younger kids than me. So it is really hard for us to even do anything, or even like, okay, can we meet for breakfast? Yeah. Well, I got to get so-and-so on the bus at this time, so I can't, meet until this time. And it's like, I can manipulate my schedule more than they can. So I do it. But people sometimes they just don't want to have the patience for it. They're like, okay, I'm not waiting around for you anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. Some people can be very inflexible. They're just like, well, you can't do what you used to do. And so you're basically abandoning us.
Right.
It's like, well, thanks for the understanding.
Yeah, it is. And it's frustrating. And I know I've said to my husband a few times too, like, all my friends have little kids. Nobody can do anything, because it's true. But it's just hard. And even like when we started this podcast, your kids were little.
Oh, yeah. They were tiny. I was nursing through the episodes.
Yeah. And it was like, okay, well, you could only record on certain days because that was when you had childcare help. And it was like, but I was in a place where I could work around that because my kids were older and it wasn't that big a deal for me. But like you said, some people can be really inflexible and you can feel really lonely.
Yeah.
When you're the only one out of your friends that have kids. But that's not what this episode's about. I'm totally getting off on a tangent here.
Yeah, but it's so relatable for everybody. I mean, it's okay.
Yeah. We are going to talk about another thing that is like kind of lonely. Like when your baby gets older, where do you go for breastfeeding help? When your baby gets older, when your baby gets to be older than like 4 months, what do you do if you're having problems with breastfeeding? Like,
so much of it, there's just so much information about like newborns, but not much about older babies.
Not much about older babies at all.
Because by the time your baby is older, most people have weaned.
Right.
It's not a lot of people. I think it's more than it was. Well, whatever. This is something that trends, right? But it's getting more from when like I first started my blog, I think people are breastfeeding longer.
Yeah, I think so too. I do. Or maybe it's just that's who's in our community.
That could be.
But I feel like people are breastfeeding longer. But I have noticed too that like if you try to go to your pediatrician and your baby is 3-4 months old, they don't know what to tell you because they're just
like, oh yeah, you could start cow's milk now. Yeah, no, your breast milk's not going to have enough fat or calories or anything in, for that. So you'll have to switch, add some cow's milk, add some bovine breast milk.
I had a client who bovine breast milk. I had a client who, and this just happened like while you were gone, and I had like wanted to. Because Abby just got back from her yearly escapade, but the baby was in a nursing strike. Like a 3-month-old baby was in a nursing strike. She took the baby to the pediatrician to make sure to rule out any like ear infection and stuff like that, which is a good idea to do because sometimes ear infections can cause nursing strikes. So she wanted to rule all that stuff out. And the nurse practitioner said, the baby just doesn't like your milk anymore.
What an asshole. Oh my God. What in the world?
And she goes, I know enough not to listen to that. So, it's not.
Just think of all the people that don't know enough not to listen to that.
I know.
Oh, that's so sad. What an idiot.
Right? Like, that's what you're going to hear when your baby's 3 months old and in a nursing strike. Oh, well, the baby just doesn't like your milk anymore. And she was like, first of all, I know enough not to listen to that. Second of all, the baby takes my milk just fine out of a bottle. So explain that one.
Yeah. Well, then they just don't like your breast.
So dumb. I was like, I'm so glad you know enough not to listen to that. But that's the kind of advice you're getting because they don't know what to tell you, because they don't know, because they haven't been trained in it. So they don't know what to tell you. So if you go to your pediatrician or you go to anybody, you know, when your baby is 4, 5, 6, 7 months old and you're like, I'm, you know, having problems with biting, or I'm having problems with solids, or I'm having problems with nursing strikes, they don't know what to tell you because they don't see babies breastfeeding this long.
Yeah.
It is not typical. It is just not. You're in the minority if you're breastfeeding your baby over 6 months in this country, in the United States of America. You're in the minority.
Totally. Yep.
So we thought we would do. Now I feel like there's a lot to talk about because I was also looking at some things like what your baby is doing at these ages, you know, like developmentally, because that's some of the problem. I find that we start to have problems with breastfeeding. Like it's kind of, I don't even know. It's kind of unfair because like in the beginning, you're just trying to get things going. You're just trying to get used to everything. You're trying to recover from having a baby. You know, you're tired. Everything is like chaos. And then you get into a groove and you're going along just fine. And then you hit like 4 months and your baby becomes really distracted and they're hitting all these developmental milestones and all this stuff is going on. And then it screws up breastfeeding again for totally different reasons. Or sometimes even the latch can get bad again because they're so distracted and they're pulling off the breast, or they're, you know, doing that thing where they're pulling their nipple with you constantly while they're looking around the room. And, you know, it's can be a little bit painful again, or they're teething and they're biting down. You know, you might get some of that happening after 5, 6 months. And it's like, okay, now what do you do? What happens now? And you're to the point where you're like, okay, I don't want to stop breastfeeding. So how do I fix this? And it's, you know, for some babies, there's a lot of developmental, well, for all babies, there's a lot of developmental stuff happening too. So you want to know what your baby's doing at 4 months? I'll tell you. There's social cues. They're working on eye gazing. They're following your gaze. They're following an object. They can take a turn in conversation. So you can talk with them and then they'll back. And then you can talk to them and then they can like chatter back to you.
That's so cute. And they have those little videos that go around the internet of like people like having, there's this one where this guy is like sitting on the couch with his baby and he says something. He's like, yeah, I know. That's really great. And the baby's like, blah, 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 blah. And he's like, oh, I know. Yeah. And they go back and forth like that. It's very cute.
And they can laugh. They're socially at this age too.
They'll
laugh at you. Laugh.
Oh, laugh. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I mean, they are laughing earlier than now, but they'll laugh like socially at this age. So they're babbling. And they can do that volume modulation of their voice too. So it might sound like they are really, really chattering with you. It's really cute.
Adorable.
Yeah, it is really cute. So they can roll from front to back. They're gross motor. They can roll from front to back. Their newborn reflexes are more integrated. So what that means is that, you know, how Abby and I always are telling people, like, of course, in the first couple of months, if you give your baby a bottle, they're going to take it because it's an involuntary reflex. They can't help it. That becomes less involuntary. So now, like around 4 months, they can reject a bottle if they want to, because they have more control over that stuff now. For their fine motor, they're touching their individual fingers together and they can open and close their hands.
Oh,
I know. They're doing so much stuff at this age that no wonder.
Man. And you could see when they figure it out and they're just doing it, like opening, closing their hand over and over again.
Yeah.
because they
Yeah.
figured it out. I
Now,
told
when
you, I
there's-
remember saying that when Jack found his ears
Oh,
and he just
yeah.
kept reaching up and grabbing his ears, freaked me out like crazy. I was like, oh my God, what's he doing? What's wrong with him?
It's like he's just figuring out that he's got body parts. Their feet, when they figure that out, that's always cute too. So when they're 6 months, they can respond to their reflection and they recognize their name at 6 months.
Oh.
They are babbling more, imitating word sounds, and they're crying more with discomfort. So if they're like uncomfortable, teething, stuff like that, you might get them crying. They're not just crying randomly anymore just to get your attention. There's a reason why at that age. Gross motor, they're rolling back to front and they're sitting briefly unassisted. I love it when they get to that age where they're just kind of sitting a little bit and then they start to like teeter.
Yeah.
You have to like prop them up, put stuff around them, put the boppy around them before they like fall backwards. They can reach for objects and can transfer objects across their midline. So you can hand them something and they can pass it back and forth.
Mm.
And they can bang an object on a surface at that age.
Yes, they can. And they will.
And it's so fun for them to do that stuff. But they're learning so many things that it can be really difficult. Breastfeeding is like something they already know.
I know this sounds like such little things, but these are major things for a baby. They're
major things.
This is life altering. They have no time for anything else.
Yeah. Not at all. And their little brain is just going. And this is, there's also stuff that they're doing that you can't see. This is stuff that you can see and hear.
Right. Yeah.
And then there's stuff behind the scenes as well that they're, kind of figuring out as they go along. So that's kind of around we just kind of covered 4 to 6 months what they're doing developmentally. But you might find, as far as nursing strikes, and I know we did an episode not too long ago on nursing strikes, 7 months is the most popular age for a nursing strike. I don't know if anybody know if I happened to say that last time or not, but the most popular age for a nursing strike is 7 months. And that might be because of teething. It might be because of developmentally, there's just so much going on for them. But that's, if you're going to see a nursing strike, that's probably around the age you're going to see it. It can, of course, be earlier or it could, of course, be later, but the average age is about 7 months for a nursing strike, which I think, too, is really kind of around a teething. I think that's around a good, around teething ages.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, for sure. Why don't we take a break and then we're going to talk about, what happens when they start solids and stuff.
Alrighty, we'll be right back.
We'll be right back.
Today's episode is brought to you by Sarah's Chill, a company that never stops making the lives of breastfeeding parents easier. Created by a mom for moms, Sarah's Chill knows the challenges that come with this journey, including cleaning pump parts and baby bottles in some of the ickiest places. Keeping breastfeeding gear clean is super important, but it can feel almost impossible when you're away from home. With the all-you-need wash basin bag, you'll always have a safe place to wash your essentials. All you need is soap and water. The wash basin includes a waterproof canvas bag, a collapsible scrub brush, a soap dispenser, and a microfiber towel. Not only are the parts TSA friendly, but it can roll up between uses and be tossed in the wash at the end of the day. Whether it's a game-changing breast milk chiller, an epic freezer storage system, or a travel wash basin bag, this company has everything you need and want. Sarah's Chill is truly breastfeeding reimagined. Head over to sarahschill.com, that's CERESCHILL.com. Check them out on Instagram by the same name and use code BADASS for 15% off of your purchase of any of the items that we talk about, anything on site.
And all the other cool stuff they have.
I know, they have such cool stuff. They really do have really cool stuff that's made to make your life easier. You can head to the link or you can head to the show notes under this episode, wherever you're listening from. You can also go to badassbreastfeedingpodcast.com to find the links to their website, to the promo codes, and everything that you need to get your Sarah's Chill stuff. And over at badassbreastfeedingpodcast.com, you can find all of our other episodes, and you can find information about scheduling your very own one-on-one online lactation consultation with Dianne. And you really will get Dianne.
You will.
That's her right there.
And probably a dog. But
yeah. And
but yeah,
I know we'll get back to that in a second, but like it's like I don't think we talk enough about the lactation consultations. Like you can just sign up. It's $90, right? And you can
for an hour. Yeah.
For an hour. And you will also, Dianne can help you file that claim with your insurance.
Right.
Which may or may not be covered because
insurance
the land
sucks.
of, land of sucky insurance. But they might, or partially. And then you get Dianne for an hour just to work on your issues.
Absolutely. Whatever it might be.
Whatever age.
At whatever age, exactly. So like we said, around 4 months, the biggest thing we see is distraction, where your baby is like all of a sudden coming on and off the breast, and really just, you have to like find yourself in a dark room. You have to find yourself taking away distractions. You have to find yourself kind of like changing up how you are nursing them to get a feeding out of them. You also might find that babies around this age are not taking quite as long to eat. And that's okay, because they tend to start to become pretty efficient.
Yeah.
So you might find that your baby that was feeding for, 15 minutes might feed for 5 and be good. And that's it. You might also find that your baby might be trying to stretch their feeds out a little bit longer as well, which is always kind of cool. And this happens around this time. And a lot of times I'll see parents that are like, well, the baby won't eat. I'm trying to get the baby to eat and the baby won't eat. And it almost looks like a nursing strike. But what's really going on is that the baby's just not ready to eat yet. You're going off your schedule. You're like, oh, wait a minute. It's been 3 hours. I have to feed the baby now, instead of kind of going by what the baby wants to do. So baby-led feeding, where we're just feeding the baby whenever the baby wants to be fed, is the best way to go. Still, I know we talk about that in the very beginning, but it's still the best way to go, because your baby might be trying to stretch those feeds out a little bit longer too. And they might want to go an extra half an hour without eating, and maybe they're just not quite ready yet. But we'll take a bottle if you give it to them. So don't let that be, an indication of anything. So then around 6 months, we're starting solids. Around 6 months.
Yep.
Some people start.
Fun.
Yeah, that's always fun. And solids can be always a big concern. I always have people that are like, I don't know what to do. You can definitely feed your baby and not screw things up, I promise. So just breastfeed first and feed a little bit of solids, but keep breastfeeding, because the breast milk is going to be still their greatest source of nutrition for the first few months of you doing solids.
And we have like entire episodes on starting solids.
We do.
But I always drive the point home is nurse first, breastfeed first.
Absolutely.
Nurse first. It rhymes, so it must be right. It doesn't exactly rhyme, but like Eminem rhymes.
Yeah, absolutely. Sounds like it goes together.
Yeah. And that's just, it's like, when do I offer the solids? What do I do? Just nurse first, and then offer the solids and have fun. And don't worry about how much they're swallowing or what your doctor said needed to happen. Their doctor is going to say like, oh, you might need to slow down with your breastfeeding so that they'll eat more food. That is nonsense.
You don't need to do that.
Don't do that. Don't do it.
No.
Don't do that. We want them to have the nutrient-dense breast milk. We want them filled up on that. And that people say food before 1 is just for fun.
That rhymes.
It does. I know. See, that must be right.
Must be right because it rhymes.
But
Now-
like, it's true because it's like learning how to eat is so much more than just like learning how to swallow. Like they're learning how to move it around their mouth. They're learning about textures. They're learning about picking it up. Their brain is just like, holy crap, what the hell was that? That just went into my mouth. That's a whole learning process. It takes it takes years for them to adjust to.
And that's, their comfort is still nursing. That is still what their comfort is. It's still what they're getting. And I did a consult with one of our listeners, I don't know, it was a couple months ago, where she was concerned about some stuff with salads. And she's like, am I overthinking it? And I'm like, you're absolutely overthinking it. And I think a lot of people do overthink it because they're like, what do I do? How do I do it? Are they getting what they need? Am I taking something away from them? Am I not giving them enough of something? What is it's like, no, just don't overthink it. Don't overthink it. Just keep breastfeeding. It's really easy to overthink things. It's so easy to overthink it. And of course, it wouldn't be this time frame if we didn't mention sleep regression, which I hate that phrase, but I think we even have an episode on how much I hate that phrase, regression. Yeah. It's not a regression. It's
not a regression. It is a sleep event. A normal sleep happening.
Yeah. Where they maybe started to wake up a little bit more. Maybe your baby. That's why I love it when people get like super excited when their baby starts sleeping these long stretches at 3 months.
Yeah.
3 months or so, or 2-3 months, they're sleeping these longer stretches. And then it's like, might not last. But the regression has nothing to do, if we want to call it, for lack of a better word, it happens because there's so much going on for them progressively. So it's really like a sleep progression instead of a regression.
Yeah.
They're not sleeping as well because there's so much happening developmentally with them. So they're waking more. They're waking more frequently. Their sleep cycles are shorter. They're figuring out that their sleep cycles are shorter and they're waking up.
Yeah. I mean, it's like when you have a super busy day, you're like, oh, I'm just going to collapse. And then you lay in bed and you're not falling asleep. Your brain is still like wired.
Right. And as adults, we all get that, right? We totally get it as adults. I don't know how many times I can tell you. We were out with some people that my husband works with the other day, and they were all talking about how like they need all this help with sleep because they can't turn their brain off at night. There was like three or four people, like there was, I don't know, 6 or 8 of us that were out, and I was only kind of half listening to a conversation. And they were all talking about the different sleep aids they use.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Everybody's on meds. What kind of thing can I use to get me to sleep? But when it's a baby, it's like, no, we have no understanding.
It's totally, but it's the same concept. Their brain is just not turning off. They're still going.
Right.
And they're learning so much stuff that they're not turning off. And as adults, that happens to us all the time. But for babies, we're like, why aren't you sleeping 12 hours? And it's like, they just don't. And then you get people that are nervous that their baby isn't sleeping, so their brain's not developing. Like, no, they are. They make up for it. They sleep. It's just not in long stretches. That's all. And it's hard because then they're waking you up and then you're probably back to work already. So now you're waking up with them, and it's not convenient, but it's part of their development. And that makes a lot, when it's happening at this age, a lot of times people are thinking that it's feeding related. Because of course babies wake up and then you feed them, or they want to be fed. Feel like, are they not getting enough during the day? Sometimes that can happen. Sometimes they're so distracted by stuff that's going on around them that they're not getting enough to eat during the day. So they do wake up a little bit more overnight. But again, that's part of the developmental stage that they're in. But they're not like starving because your milk supply is in the dirt.
Right.
And you only have milk at night, so that's the only time they're up eating. That is not happening. That is not happening. It is not about that. It's all developmental. So and you just got to kind of put your head down and drive through it.
Yep.
There's not much else you can do.
No, there's not. Bed chair.
That's
Try
about
to
all
sleep.
you can do.
Try to just get some sleep while they're latched on.
Yeah. That's about the only thing you can do. Then I have some people that are like, we're trying to bed share, but the baby's like up and trying to crawl around. And it's like,
oh yeah, that's so annoying when they can start moving. And then they're like, oh, I could just leave if I wanted. And you're like, damn it. This is a whole new ball game now.
I know, right? So that's kind of like 4, 5, 6 months. Then you're starting solids. And of course, people are like, oh, when you start solids, your baby's going to sleep better. There's no research behind that. This is becoming a downer of an episode. But it's like, there is no research behind your baby all of a sudden sleeping 12 hours because they got some cereal. Like, that is not gonna.
No, it might happen it might happen the first night because it's a new experience. And maybe they just like got tired or, which is the exact opposite of what we just said. But I mean, it might happen, that like inconsistently. So then it happened to one person. They're like, oh yeah, my baby had solids. And then they just slept forever. And then, but that I bet you didn't happen the next night.
Yeah. It's not something that continues on. Absolutely not. And most people will say that. I thought that the baby would sleep better once they got solids. Like, no.
Sorry that you thought that.
I know. Sorry that somebody told you that and totally ruined your life.
Some crackpot told you that.
Yeah. And it's not the case. So just keep plugging away. They're only eating like one meal, like the equivalent of like one meal, when they're starting solids, not even.
If that.
Yeah, it's not much at all.
It's mostly all over the walls and the floor and your hair.
And the dog. Yeah, it's totally, we don't even know what they're getting in their mouth. Yeah. So, and that's what we say, why we say like food before one is just for fun, because they are figuring out, it's all a learning process for them. It's not necessarily about how many calories they're getting or what they're taking in or any of that stuff. It's more about like, they're just figuring it out. They're getting different textures and they're, doing all this cool stuff.
Yeah.
As you're getting closer, some people like to wean at around a year. If you're somebody that's like, that is your plan. And we're going to have an episode probably pretty soon coming up about that. But babies might start to eat a little bit less as you're ramping up the solids. And when I say ramping up the solids, I mean like at like a year. I don't mean like at 7 months, because your baby is still having lots and lots of breast milk for the majority of the time that you're doing solids.
Yeah. Yeah.
But then at around a year, some people are like, okay, I'm ready to wean. Now what do I do? And we're going to be having, like I said, we're going to have an episode coming up about that in probably in a little while. But that is a totally different story in and of itself. Babies are going to start maybe eating a little bit less. You might find that your baby that's, 8, 9 months old is finally sleeping a little bit better again. So you might find that your feedings are a little bit less. You might only be feeding 5 or 6 times a day as opposed to 9 or 10 times a day that you were doing at 4 months. So things definitely change, and just go with it. Just keep feeding your baby on demand. That does not change. Keep feeding them on demand.
Yeah.
You can't
go wrong.
You gotta
do.
You can't. Yeah. You can't go wrong if that's what you're doing.
It's true. Yeah. I mean, anybody that tells you to just start intervening, no. Changing the way you nurse, changing that. I mean, that's a red flag. That's a red flag for a person who does not understand lactation.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Want to know what they're doing at 9 months? I'll tell you.
Totally.
I'll tell you what they're doing at 9 months. They're using basic gestures such as waving, looks for dropped or hidden objects, and they're uncomfortable with with unfamiliar people. So at 9 months is where you're getting that, like that whole stranger danger thing where they're just like
separation anxiety.
Yeah. Separation anxiety. That starts around 9 months old, and that can go on for months, by the way. That is not something that is like, oh, your baby's 10 months. They should be fine with strangers now. No, that's not how it works. It can go on for quite a while.
Yeah.
Where they're just like, and it should. Personally, I think that.
I know,
mean, that's
just forever be wary of everyone.
Right. Like they shouldn't just be like, people shouldn't be surprised that your baby is uncomfortable with strangers. Like that should not make anybody like, that should not be a surprise to anybody.
Yeah.
It really shouldn't.
Right.
It just should not be a surprise to anybody. For language, they may use simple sounds as words like mama, papa, dada, stuff like that. And we all know that they do D's first, those harder consonants first, because everybody's offended that no babies say mama first. We all know that. They can sit well unassisted. They might be crawling. They can balance well on their hands and knees. So they might be, they might be starting to do that little crawling stuff at that point. And they can pick up small objects with 2 fingers and their thumbs. And they can release objects intentionally. So that is them like when they're sitting in a high chair and just dropping things on the floor. Because they're like intentionally know how to do that now at that point.
Yeah.
And they're, this is kind of the ages where they're becoming pretty fun. The first couple of months are like a sack of potatoes and they're not doing much.
Yep. I remember when my mom brought my sister home, I was 11. She brought her home and she was sitting there. She would just sit there. It's just this newborn baby just sitting there. And I go, my mom loves to tell the story. I go, when is she going to be able to do something?
Never.
And then, And then, she got more fun.
It takes time. But yeah, it's like little kids and babies and stuff like that. Like I remember my daughter at like 5 said something about me having a baby so that she would have somebody to play with. And I was like, you know how long it's going to take her to play with you? If I had a baby right now, you would not be interested anymore by the time that kid's ready. Because it takes them a while, obviously, to do anything. So that's about it.
Oh, that's awesome. Thanks for listening, y'all.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.